compromised. A massive data breach that was first reported by our NBC affiliate WRAL in Raleigh.
A massive data breach rocked the education system.
Officials in school systems all across the country are looking into a cybersecurity incident involving PowerSchool,
exposing personal information of millions. Sensitive records of students and teachers were stolen, and the hunt for the cyber criminals began. How did this breach unfold, and what are the chilling consequences? Stay tuned to find out the shocking truth behind the attack that set off a nationwide manhunt. The breach uncovered. In 2024, the shocking discovery of a massive data breach at PowerSchool, one of the largest K-12 educational software companies, sent shockwaves across the nation. It all started when an employee noticed strange activity in the system. Suspicious logins and unusual access to sensitive files raised immediate alarms. PowerSchool, which manages the data of millions of students and teachers across the United States, quickly realized the extent of the breach. It wasn't just a minor glitch, it was a full-scale attack on their network. Cybercriminals had gained access to the personal and educational records of over 60 million students and educators, including addresses, phone numbers, grades, and even social security numbers. The breach was unlike anything the company had dealt with before. PowerSchool's internal security team, along with cybersecurity experts, immediately went to work, trying to contain the damage and figure out how the attackers had infiltrated their systems. The breach sparked a nationwide panic. School districts, parents, and students were left in the dark, unsure of what data had been compromised or how it would be used. The company was under intense scrutiny, with government agencies and educational bodies calling for answers. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a growing trend of cyberattacks targeting sensitive educational data. The discovery of this breach marked the beginning of a long, ongoing battle to secure personal information in the digital age. Millions affected. The magnitude of the PowerSchool data breach quickly became apparent as investigators began to unravel the full scope of the attack. Over 60 million students, teachers, and school administrators had their personal information exposed, including everything from names, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses, to social security numbers, academic records, and more. It was one of the largest breaches of student data in history, affecting school districts across the country. Parents were horrified to learn that their children's sensitive information was now in the hands of cybercriminals. Teachers, too, were left feeling vulnerable, knowing that their personal and professional details were compromised. For many, the breach was not just a breach of data, but a breach of trust. PowerSchool, which was supposed to be a safe and secure platform for managing educational information, had failed to protect the very data that families and schools relied on. The breach affected schools in every state, causing widespread concern about how this would impact students' safety and privacy. Some school districts took immediate action, suspending access to PowerSchool and switching to alternative systems, while others scrambled to notify affected families and provide support. The breach also led to a flurry of lawsuits, as parents and educators sought legal recourse for the mishandling of their sensitive data. As millions of individuals across the nation were left to deal with the fallout, it became clear that the PowerSchool breach was not just a wake-up call for the company, but for the entire education sector. Personal data at risk. The PowerSchool data breach wasn't just a breach of an online system. It was an invasion of personal privacy on a massive scale. The cyberattack exposed highly sensitive personal data that could be used for malicious purposes. Names, addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers, and academic records were all accessible to hackers who could now exploit this information for identity theft, fraud, or even worse. For students, whose data is typically considered off-limits for malicious use, this breach raised significant concerns. Hackers now had access to years of personal and academic information, data that could be sold on the dark web or used to target families directly. The breach put vulnerable children at risk, as their information could be misused for everything from opening fraudulent accounts to applying for credit in their names. Teachers and school administrators weren't spared either. Their personal details, including social security numbers, employment history, and private contact information, were exposed. This made them targets for cybercriminals who could use this data for phishing scams or other identity theft schemes. Parents who had trusted PowerSchool with their children's education-related data were now left wondering how safe their families were. The breach not only undermined trust in PowerSchool, but also raised broader questions about the security of student data nationwide. How could something so personal and vital be so easily exposed? This breach became a chilling reminder of how vulnerable personal data is in the hands of the wrong people. The investigation begins. As the investigation intensified, the authorities launched a nationwide manhunt to track down the hackers behind the PowerSchool data breach. Cybercrime units across the country worked together, using sophisticated digital forensics to trace the movements of the criminals. With each lead, the pressure mounted, as the stolen data had already begun circulating on dark web forums. The hackers remained elusive, but law enforcement remained determined to hold them accountable, promising swift justice to prevent further exploitation of the stolen information. The manhunt for hackers. As the investigation into the PowerSchool data breach intensified, a nationwide manhunt was launched to track down the perpetrators. Cybercriminals responsible for such a large-scale breach didn't just leave behind digital traces. They left behind a wake of chaos and fear. The stolen data was valuable, and authorities knew that these hackers would try to monetize it, possibly selling it on the dark web or using it for identity theft and fraud. The authorities worked closely with cybersecurity firms, digital forensics teams, and law enforcement agencies to piece together the digital trail left by the hackers. They analyzed the cybercriminals' methods, from the malware used in the attack to the servers that had been accessed. However, as the investigation unfolded, it became apparent that the criminals behind the breach were skilled in covering their tracks, using advanced techniques like VPNs, encrypted messaging, and anonymous transactions to evade detection. The national response grew more urgent as the search for the hackers spread across the country. Schools, districts, and even local governments began to provide assistance, sharing any relevant information that might lead to an arrest. Investigators started looking into possible connections to organized cybercrime syndicates, hoping to uncover a larger network that could be linked to similar attacks across the country. Despite the scale of the manhunt, the hackers remained elusive. Authorities were determined to catch them, but with the complexities of the digital world, they faced challenges that were not only technical but also global. The attackers could be operating from anywhere, making international cooperation essential in tracking down their whereabouts. The nationwide manhunt became not just about catching individuals, but also about sending a strong message that cybercrimes of this magnitude would not be tolerated. As the investigation dragged on, the pressure mounted for both PowerSchool and law enforcement. The breach had not only compromised millions of people's personal data, but it had also exposed a serious vulnerability in the nation's educational systems. The manhunt for the hackers was far from over, and the nation waited anxiously to see if justice would be served. Lessons learned from the breach. The PowerSchool data breach served as a harsh wake-up call for schools and organizations handling sensitive data. The incident highlighted the urgent need for stronger cybersecurity measures to protect personal information. Schools across the nation began reassessing their security protocols, implementing stricter safeguards, and educating staff on potential threats. The breach also sparked discussions on the importance of transparency and accountability in handling personal data, pushing for better laws and practices to prevent future breaches. The fallout from the PowerSchool breach changed the way we think about data security, but this isn't the only shocking heist we've uncovered. In our next video, we'll reveal how a group of hackers stole millions without ever touching a bank. Don't miss out on this mind-blowing story. Subscribe now and stay ahead of the curve.